Nicht Deutschland! In uns marschiert Deutschland und hinter uns kommt Deutschland!
Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany in 1933. First, he was chancellor. Then he became the Führer, the leader. He banned all political opposition, and he was determined to take away the rights of German Jews. And so throughout his time in power, he looked for a solution to what he and his Nazi party called the Jewish question. His first solution was to separate Jews from the rest of the German population. He declared hundreds of towns would be Jew-free, driving Jews to the larger cities. The second solution was immigration, encouraging Jews to leave for other countries by passing laws forbidding them, for example, to teach at universities. The Nazis encouraged non-Jews to boycott Jewish stores. And then, in November of 1938, there was Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. Jewish property was attacked, including several synagogues, which were burned to the ground. When Hitler started World War II by invading Poland in 1939, he suddenly had more than 3 million Jewish Poles under his control. To separate them from the rest of the Polish population, there was a third solution. He forced Jews into ghettos. Jews were forced from their homes and confined to specific areas of a few cities. They lived in overcrowded conditions and in poverty. In the capital of Poland, Warsaw, 2,000 Jews a month were starving to death in the ghetto. As the Germans conquered more and more countries of Europe, they had control of more and more Jews, and the Nazis devised the final solution. The final solution was to kill the Jews as quickly as possible, every single Jew if it could be done, and that led to places like this, Auschwitz, a death camp built by the Nazis in Poland. There were other death camps built in territory controlled by the Nazis, but this was the worst. Here, murder was an industry, the only industry. It began with Jews being brought here in rail cars. It would be tempting to say they were treated like cattle, but that would be too kind. Judy Cohen, who now lives in Canada, was on one of the cattle cars that came to Auschwitz from Hungary.
Everybody was standing so tightly, like herrings in a jar. We were perspiring. We were stunned. The atmosphere was indescribable, hot. They gave us salted pork, pieces of salted pork to eat, but no water. And one container as a toilet for 78 people.
What happened next was called selection. The Germans sent most of the new arrivals to gas chambers.
I had to pass by these high-ranking Nazi officers. And to tell you the truth, I was afraid to look at their faces. But I do remember one of them, the hands. They wore white gloves. This one was wearing white gloves. And he just looked at you, and then he said, either you, that's what he did. Go to the left, or go to the left, or go to the right. That's it. He measured you up, and within seconds, really, you were just sentenced one way or another. So all of a sudden, we see my mother, my aunt, all my cousins who had children, and there were many of them in the cattle car, including my sister-in-law. They all went to the left. And my 3 sisters and young women like myself, we went to the right. But you know, at this point, we didn't know what this either direction meant, so we never said goodbye to those who went to the left. Because we didn't know this is the last time we see them, and that's what happened. That's the last time I saw my mother.
At Auschwitz today, there is evidence of this murder without pity. The empty canisters of the poisonous gas, the shoes of the victims, their luggage, their eyeglasses, even, horrifyingly, their hair. The Germans used it to weave into cloth to line the coats of their soldiers. The prisoners who were allowed to live were then prepared for a life of forced labor.
First thing they had to do was strip naked, totally naked, take up all our clothes. And that was the first of many humiliating and dehumanizing acts we had to go through. And we stood there totally naked. If you hesitated, they hit you. Somebody will hit you. So we did that. In the next room, they shaped our heads, and they shaped all our bodily hairs, everywhere. And next step was they had to pass by this woman who disinfected us, all our private parts, with a foul-smelling liquid, which I think was Javex. And of course, it stung our freshly shaven areas. Next room was a shower. Maybe it lasted 2 minutes of cold shower. Then we were driven outside. Luckily, it was July 4th, it was warm, and there was a heap of old, dirty clothing. I think it was disinfected from lice. And then an SS woman stood there and just threw you one piece of garment that they called a dress. And that's what you had to wear. Whether it fitted or not, it didn't matter. You couldn't complain.
The sign over the gate at Auschwitz says Arbeit macht frei, work will set you free. But it was a lie. The Nazis brutalized the prisoners, fed them starvation rations, beat them, executed them for petty reasons or often for no reason at all. Nazi doctors, like Joseph Mengele, performed so-called medical experiments on prisoners. It was an excuse for cruel, unspeakable torture. The Nazis didn't care how many died. There were always more Jews in more cattle cars on the way.
They could and they did murder 8,000 to 10,000 people a day. That's how well-oiled the machine was. What they couldn't do is burn them all, because the crematoria had the capacity, so they had to dig ditches, and some of the bodies were burned in ditches, you see. So it was a carnage of beyond human comprehension.
This barren, horrible place compels everyone to remember the dead, honor the survivors, and pledge never again. There were leaders from around the world, including Canada's Governor-General, Adrienne Clarkson. But more importantly, some survivors returned to this place of nightmares.
And if we can go into one of the barracks that has the bunks in.
From Canada, there was Nate Leipziger.
I could hear noises going on. I went up on the top of the bunk and I looked through that opening there, and I saw, and I wish I didn't see it, but I saw trucks of naked women being transported to the gas chamber. And by that time they knew what was happening, and they were screaming. And they were screaming as the thing was going.
It's a Jewish custom to light a candle in memory of relatives who die. Nate Leipziger did that for his mother and sister. Could it happen again? Nate Leipziger says it depends not just on world leaders, but on all of us.
Just don't sit there. Get you out of your reverie and get doing something.
At least 1.1 million people, 1 million of them Jews, died at Auschwitz. Other victims included Polish and Soviet prisoners, Roma people, also known as gypsies, homosexuals, disabled people, and anti-Nazi Germans. The president of Germany attended this year's ceremony. He told a group of survivors that people must keep on returning to Auschwitz so that future generations know what happened there and why, so that it never happens again. And that's News in Review. I'm Carla Robinson. Thanks for watching.
Initially, it was that we had a submarine there and that we needed to do something.
They are unidentified floating objects in Canada's Arctic waters. But why are they there, and what can we do about it?
We have to assert our sovereignty very strongly, beginning now rather than waiting.
On News in Review today, Northern UFOs. Hello, I'm Carla Robinson. Way up in the Canadian high Arctic, a legendary shipping route winds its way through a maze of ice, islands, and dangerous shoals. It's the Northwest Passage that connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans across the frozen roof of the world. For hundreds of years, explorers tried to find this shortcut between Europe and the Far East. But when the passage was finally navigated by Norwegian Roald Amundsen in 1906, it turned out to be a bit of a disappointment. It was covered by too much ice for too much of the year to be used by commercial shipping. But now that ice is melting at an alarming rate, and some scientists predict that in as little as 10 years' time, the passage could be ice-free enough to be turned into a busy shipping lane. A lane that would shave more than 10,000 kilometers off the route through the Panama Canal and could be used by supertankers and large container ships too big to go through that canal. If that happens, it could have a dramatic effect on many Inuit communities and the land and the animals they depend on for survival. It would bring more pollution to the Arctic, expose its vulnerable ecosystem to oil spills and other environmental catastrophes. And the Canadian government might not be able to do anything about it.
Bridge Ops, 1 new contact to report, Skunk 2-1.
Canada considers the Northwest Passage an inland waterway under Canadian control. But the United States and many other countries believe it should be considered an international shipping passage. The U.S. has already tested our sovereignty by sending a few ships and a number of submarines through the passage. And now some mysterious unidentified floating objects appear to be doing the same thing. The CBC's Kelly Crow looks at what these northern UFOs might be up to and what it could mean for Canadian sovereignty in the Arctic.
I was in a 24-foot freight canoe in Shark Fiord around the end of August in 1999 when I came up behind the sub. That was surface.
We were in 2 freighter canoes when we saw a big wake. It was at least 7 feet. It was moving fast. It was going
At
straight
first,
north.
I thought it was a rock. I checked it with my binoculars. It was longer than my 24-foot canoe and too large to be a seal. It had 2 humps, and the left hump was higher.
I think
It
it
had
saw me
rounded
because he
edges.
pointed a red beam at me, and my nephew pointed a
We
rifle
were
at it.
scared. I
And
have
I told
hunted
him
whales
not to
all my
shoot it.
life, but it was no animal. I have never seen anything like it.
Those eyewitness reports come from Inuit hunters, the eyes and ears of the North, the watchkeepers of Canada's sovereignty. So when the Inuit started seeing something strange in the waters around Baffin Island in the summer of 1999, military officials suspected it could be a foreign submarine. When none of Canada's allies admitted to being in the area, National Defence Headquarters mounted a top-secret military operation to search for a trespassing submarine, codename Operation Arctic Char. If the Inuits said they saw a submarine, Pierre Leblanc believed them. Living in the north as the Canadian Forces Northern Commander, he had come to trust the Inuit knowledge of the land. And to Leblanc, a foreign submarine was a serious situation.
Initially, it was that we had a submarine there and that we needed to do something, and we actually mounted a very significant operation, the largest one when I was the commander in that area, where we brought in forces of Maritime Command through the long-range maritime patrol aircraft. Unfortunately, by the time the reports came to us and the time the aircraft overflew the target area, they did not find anything. But that's not to say that there wasn't something there in the first place. And then when that submarine figured that they had been spotted, undeniably, then decided to move out of the Lancaster Sound.
To this day, Leblanc believes there was a submarine, but that is not the official conclusion. Officially, since they didn't see a submarine, there was no submarine. Nature photographer Mike Bedell has spent years traveling through the Arctic, taking pictures of the land and its wildlife. It's an adventure that draws him back year after year. In the summer of 2000, he was kayaking around Bylot Island off the north coast of Baffin Island when something happened he will never forget.
I was looking out across Lancaster Sound. It was a beautiful evening. It was dead calm, and looking towards Devon Island, which is about 80-90 kilometers away. And something surfaced, which initially I thought was a whale, but as I looked more closely, I saw that it wasn't breathing, and I realized it was a sub coming to the surface. And initially, what I saw was the area where the periscope comes up, and it traveled in a very slow-moving movement.
Mike Bedell had a satellite phone, and he immediately called the military to report what he saw. It was the beginning of another series of sightings for the second consecutive year, and the Chief of Maritime Command suspected a trend. In this memo, he writes, "What I was really trying to determine was whether or not there was a location, time of year pattern, suggesting the military could be ready and waiting next year." The response to his question was this: if there is a trend, the July-September period seems to be the most common. Sure enough, the next summer, for the third consecutive year, there was another series of sightings around Baffin Island. No submarine was ever found. Yet the sightings have been happening for decades. Confidential national defense documents released under access to information reveal that there have been dozens of reports of possible submarines in the area, most of them after the Cold War ended, at least 31 since 1999.
It's not about the threat of invasion by a hostile country, not anymore. The threat now is more subtle. It's the creeping erosion of Canada's sovereignty by countries that see the growing value of Canada's north. And when it comes to sovereignty, the rules are clear: either defend it or lose it.
It was easier for Canada back when the Arctic was almost completely frozen. But now, as the North warms up, the rest of the world is beginning to realize the vast commercial possibilities.
Since the opening of the North now economically, there's a lot of activity. Diamond exploration and mining, we have oil exploration, and there is in fact quite a bit of oil in the north. But it seems that nobody is looking after the sovereignty of Canada per se.
When it comes to protecting sovereignty, LeBlanc believes Canada is making a big mistake if it doesn't challenge foreign submarines in the strongest possible way.
If a foreign submarine was in Canadian waters, submerged, without our permission, this would be considered an act of war.
And what do you mean by an act of war?
It would be an action conducted by a foreign nation that could possibly trigger a war. It's a nation taking an action that is deemed aggressive enough that the responding nation needs to take action.
Canada's Minister of National Defence, Bill Graham, has a different view.
It is not a serious threat to our sovereignty. And I don't think we should exaggerate it here. If a submarine went through the Arctic ice, this is clearly something which we manage and but we cannot try and suggest that this is some sort of a Second World War threat to Canada's sovereignty that's taking place here. It's far from it.
Canadian concern about northern sovereignty dates back to the days of the Cold War, when the U.S. set up a chain of radar stations in Canada's north to watch for Soviet aircraft. Canadians